Welcome back to JT on the Go. This is part 2 of my 4-part series about the National World War II Museum in New Orleans, Louisiana. If you haven't watched part 1, I reviewed the causes of World War II in the US home front. I recommend doing that before watching part 2. In part 2, we will be going over World War II in Europe. This would include all of the major battles that took place in Europe. But first, let's talk about the leaders of each of the countries involved. We'll start off with the Allies. The leader of the United States during World War II was our 32nd president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He is one of America's most popular presidents. He is the only U.S. president to serve 4 terms and the only U.S. president to be in a wheelchair. He also had a lot of accomplishments, like the New Deal, which was created to help the American public during the Great Depression. The leader of Great Britain during World War II was Prime Minister Winston Churchill. Leading up to World War II, Neville Chamberlain was Britain's prime minister. His plans of stopping Hitler from invading Austria and Czechoslovakia failed. He resigned shortly after, and Churchill took over the position, serving from 1940 to 1945. The leader of the Soviet Union during the war was Joseph Stalin. After Vladimir Lenin, the founder of the Soviet Union, died, Stalin took over the USSR and began building the country. If you know the definition of communism, communism means the government takes control of the economy, and that's exactly what he did. He took control of all the farmlands and sold all the grain grown on the farms to make money, leaving none for the people operating them. This period became known as Holodomor, where 8 million Ukrainians died from starvation from 1932 to 1933. Stalin also put people that did not agree with his ideas into concentration camps. He also executed 81 of the 103 generals in the Soviet Red Army. This was the reason why Germany was able to invade the Soviet Union until the Battle of Stalingrad. Now we are going to look over the 2 leaders of the Axis countries fighting. Adolf Hitler was Germany's dictator during World War II. He hated how the German government handled the Treaty of Versailles. During his early years in the Nazis party, he tried to overthrow the German government, but this was unsuccessful, and Hitler was placed in jail for a year. During his time, he wrote Mein Kampf, or My Struggle. The book outlines many of Hitler's political beliefs, his political ideology, and future plans for Germany and the world. The leader of Italy is Benito Mussolini, aimed to restore Italy's glory in its days of the Roman Empire. But some Italian locals did not exactly agree with supporting the Axis powers. Here is a list of the Allied commanders. Dwight D. Eisenhower took control of all the Allied forces in Western Europe. As you can see on the Axis commanders in the European front, only one of them was a commander from Italy. This kinda tells you that Germany did most of the work fighting against the Allies in Europe. Here we have a little list of some of the weapons used in the fighting. After the United States entered World War II, it was very clear that the US military had to reach its maximum industrial might. Building up the US military prior to World War II pulled America out of the Great Depression. Now let's get into all the major World War II battles in Europe. The museum itself likes to call this the Road to Berlin. Germany turned on its ally Russia, and thus the first battle we will talk about is the Battle of Stalingrad. When Germany started to invade the Soviet Union in 1941, the Soviets were unprepared for the invasion, but Stalin refused to leave Moscow when the Germans advanced to the city. If you look at the size of Russia with Ukraine, Belarus, and other countries that were part of the Soviet Union combined, the country was way bigger than Germany. This means that the Eastern Front for the Germans is going to easily be thinned out because of Russia's size. Pretty soon, the German army found this to be a major mistake. Their advances were stopped by winter. The German army did not know how to fight in the cold, but the Red Army did. When winter cleared up, Germany tried to take the Caucasus in southwestern Russia, which is a place full of crude oil. But the 6th Army was left to cut the Soviet Union front alone, and to do this they had to take Stalingrad. Because the city was under Stalin's name, he ordered the Red Army to not go down without a fight and defend it at all costs. This was one of the most destructive battles of the war. The Soviet Union also moved their factories farther east. There, several weapons and vehicles were created that built up the Red Army, and after that, The new armies were ready and they cornered the German army. After that, the Soviet Union began pushing the German army back and gained superiority of the air. The next major battle was Operation Torch. German and Italian forces tried to take Egypt, which is a British colony and had the Suez Canal. Britain depended on the Suez Canal because it was the country's most direct route to its colonies in Asia. After the Battle of El Alamein, British troops began driving the German and Italian forces into Libya. Then from the northwest came American and more British troops, and they drove the Axis forces out of northern Africa. This was the first major victory for the Allies in World War II. Now the Allies can head into Italy's homeland. Well, here we are in northern Africa after Operation Torch. I can tell you, it is really hot out here. I left several water bottles in the Jeep that I have a few kilometers away. Well, I'm thirsty. Oh, there's my Jeep. I forgot I parked it right next to a sign that points the directions to Rome and Berlin. US and British forces began to invade Sicily. They also bombed Rome. If you visited Rome, Rome is a very old city and they have a lot of ancient things to see. A lot of them, like the Colosseum, were lucky enough not to be destroyed. Italy later surrendered. Because Italian locals did not want to support Hitler, they killed Mussolini and hung him on the streets.
Alone has suffered 1,900 casualties. Meanwhile, farther south, the British have landed on...
Several cities, including Rome and Venice, celebrated the liberation from the Nazis. The Allies gained superiority over the airspace of Europe. Bombers dropped bombs on factories that were making weapons to feed Germany's war effort. Some of the Tuskegee Airmen missions were to protect the bombers from German fighters. In the Yalta Conference, the Allies were planning an invasion of France and to open a Western Front against Germany. Eisenhower and his generals knew that this would result in the loss of many soldiers. This invasion will be called D-Day. On June 6, 1944, the Allies headed from London to the beaches of Normandy, France. This was the largest invasion in military history to date. Fun fact, 2024 marked 80 years since this invasion. The Nazis stood in bunkers like this one overlooking the English Channel for the Allies to arrive, and then Allied troops were dropped on the beach and the fight began. Keep in mind, a lot of these Allied soldiers that were dropped on the beach were 18 to 19 years old. Very young people. The battle was a success. After this victory, the beaches of Normandy were used to bring supplies into the Western Front from London. Now Germany was in full retreat. D-Day made Dwight D. Eisenhower a war hero, and this would help him in getting elected president because Americans like a good war hero. Here we are in the land that they are advancing in. It is very shady out here, shadier than it was in northern Africa. Hitler came up with the idea to use the same technique he used at the beginning of the war that led him to overrun France. This will be applied in the Battle of the Bulge. However, one thing the Germans did to the outnumbered American forces was to send English-speaking German forces wearing US soldier uniforms to change the signs on the roads and snap telephone wires, and that confused the Allies. The German advance went the farthest it could go on Christmas Eve at the River Meuse, due to the fact that the Germans were low on fuel for their tanks and other road vehicles.
The German advance, and a break in the weather is predicted soon.
I can tell you for a fact, it is freezing out here. If you want to know what a bulge is a spot in a smooth shape that sticks out from its original frame. And for Germany, they created a bulge in the front between them and the Allies. With the air clearing, the Allied Air Force could be used against Germany. Germany's blitzkrieg tactics couldn't be used because of the geography of the setting where the battle took place. This was known to be the largest battle fought by US forces in World War II. The winter and amounts of fuel prevented Germany from having the chance to deliver the final blow to the Allies, and they could not get that chance back. Germany also abandoned several of their tanks because they ran out of fuel. At this point, Germany was trapped. America and Europe from the west, and the Soviet Union in the east. This destroyed several cities in Germany as the Allies continued to Berlin. The Soviet Union reached Berlin. The Battle of Berlin was when the Soviet Union took control of Germany's capital. When it was clear that there was no escape, Hitler went to his bunker and committed suicide by drinking a bottle of poison and shooting himself in the head. And around this time, President FDR would have a stroke and pass away while in office, a few months after being elected to his fourth term. His vice president, Harry S. Truman, took over and became the 33rd president of the United States. The Soviet Union took control of Berlin, but Germany had to be completely invaded for the country to surrender. On May 8, 1945, Germany surrendered, ending World War II in Europe. That day became Victory in Europe Day, where cities in Europe celebrated the end of the war. Several German cities were destroyed, and they need to be rebuilt.
Vanished with little trace. Death made so common, so everyday.
A lot of the artwork in Europe was hidden and recovered for safekeeping.
To hide all the artworks.
They were kept safe in caves like this one. But one thing that was discovered was Germany's war crimes. Because Germany blamed the loss of World War I on Jews, several were arrested. However, very few were lucky to escape, like Anne Frank, the author of the Diary of Anne Frank. In Amsterdam, she hid with their family and 4 other people in the secret annex for 2 years. This is a replica of the annex in which a bookcase was the door and made it look like there was nothing behind it. The real secret annex can be seen in Amsterdam, Netherlands. Imagine having to live in darkness and remaining silent for hours at a time to stay alive.
1942. Ik heb een paar dagen niet geslapen.
During World War II, the Nazis arrested, deported, and killed Jews and other minorities. This was known as the Holocaust, the murder of 6 million Jews in Europe. If you want to learn more about the horrors of the Holocaust, I recommend watching my video about the National Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. With the war in Europe over, was World War II over? No, it's not. The United States still has to fight Japan, and we will get to that in the next episode.